Today, I want to present some news that lays the smackdown on one of the stupider and more pernicious myths about modern medicine. This whole anti-vaccination craze has really been picking up in popularity lately, which has, unsurprisingly, been followed by a surge in preventable diseases like mumps, measles, rubella, and the flu. For a variety of reasons, all of them based on misinformation, parents in the US and across many other countries in the Western world have been increasingly slow to vaccinate their children. Parents in the US and the UK and other countries across the Western world have been increasingly slow to vaccinate their children, where in 2015, up to 15% of American parents failed to follow the recommended vaccine schedule for children under 2 years old. This has led to a rise in unvaccinated children walking around schools and other public places, which disrupts something called herd immunity. To explain herd immunity, imagine a small little population of people. They all have healthy immune systems, except for one person who is born with health problems, or an allergy, or one of a million other medical issues that prevent him from being able to get vaccinated. If everyone else who can be safely vaccinated is vaccinated, then it's very unlikely that anyone will get sick from the disease that they've all been vaccinated against. And it's unlikely that the one person with a weak immune system who couldn't get the vaccination, it's unlikely that they'll come into contact with the pathogen. Because the people around him aren't carrying the pathogen because they've all been immunized, the person with a weak immune system isn't nearly as exposed. He's protected by herd immunity. Now, when parents fail to vaccinate their kids, the kids are now vulnerable to infections from these diseases, and they can carry around those diseases with them into public places. People who would normally have been protected by herd immunity are now put at risk because there's more and more contaminated people carrying these diseases walking around them, exposing them to these pathogens. This is really dangerous, not just for the unvaccinated kid, but for any other person who has to rely on herd immunity. As I said, there are a lot of reasons why parents choose not to vaccinate their kids. Some people will point at a mercury catalyst called thimerosal that's present in older vaccines, and they'll claim that that's dangerous. But the reality is that this is less mercury than you would get if you ate a sardine for breakfast. Another reason that these parents fear vaccines is because they're worried about overloading their newborn's immune system. This is another one of those myths that will get passed around. They're concerned that literally injecting multiple pathogens directly into a newborn in rapid succession will cause health problems. And to be fair, if you didn't know anything about the medical science and somebody just kind of explained this to you or you just watched it happening, it would seem somewhat terrifying because they really are injecting multiple pathogens into a newborn. That's how this works. But this leaves out a lot of nuance, and if you understand these critical details, it's not scary at all. It's a good thing. This specific fear about overloading the immune system is what I want to talk about today, because there was a recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association that explained why this fear of immune system overload is baseless and unfounded. The study looked at over 900 infants, born and studied across a 10-year period. The researchers compared children who had contracted diseases not covered by their vaccinations with children who hadn't contracted any diseases, and they found that there was no link between vaccine load and contraction of more diseases, or development of more health problems. The children's immune system, it wasn't overloaded by the vaccines. It just wasn't. They weren't harmed or otherwise negatively impacted at all by all of their vaccines. The researchers also laid out the sequence of events of birth and early adolescence, and they explained why this fear of vaccine overloading just doesn't have a basis in reality. Seriously, just think about the logical progression of how a child is born. When the child is born, they leave the safety of the womb to enter the wide open world, and this induces a, quote, tremendous shock of bacteria, unquote. Upon birth, when the child is as young as it can possibly be, it's suddenly exposed to thousands, if not millions of pathogens that it's never been exposed to before. These pathogens are everywhere. They cover the doctor's gown and the doctor's gloves. They coat the skin of the child's mother and father. They exist floating in the air that the child breathes, and they exist in the water that the child drinks. The take-home point here is that newborns are exposed to a tremendous, almost uncountable number of pathogens right out of the gate by simply being born into the world. And yet, even this is not enough to overload the infant's immune system. If exposure to millions of new pathogens can't do that in week 1 of the child's life, then 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 vaccines, each of them loaded with a disabled or a deactivated pathogen or a broken fragment of a pathogen, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to harm the child. This fear of vaccines overloading the child's immune system is unfounded. It doesn't have a basis in biological reality. If you understood the immune system and how it works, you would realize that it's actually very capable of responding to all of these different pathogens and establishing this really powerful network of memory cells to induce the secondary immune response, should those pathogens try and infect the child at a later point in its life. This is how the immune system works. Exposure to these pathogens is good because it helps stimulate the immune system. It's actually healthy because it helps the baby's body establish itself. It helps the immune system come in healthy and operational. So do society a favor. Don't be fooled by misinformation, and vaccinate your kids.